area. Hopefully it won't be as bad as it looks right now, but we have seen and heard numerous reports of tornadoes over the last hour or two.
Greg, can I ask you this? The storm system that is spinning these tornadoes out, how long do you predict that the conditions will hold that it will continue to generate these tornadoes out that are threatening the Oklahoma City area?
Well, like I said, we've been watching this complex on radar for the last 2 hours. It's incredibly well organized and almost steady state in terms of its location. Probably we've got at least another hour of extreme weather in the Oklahoma City area, and hopefully after that things will begin to decay. As you go through the nighttime hours, the air mass will begin to stabilize somewhat, which will tend to limit the potential threat from tornadoes as we go into the nighttime. There's still a big threat, though, in the Oklahoma City metro from flooding rains, and that flooding rain condition will continue across Tulsa, even into Missouri as we go into tomorrow.
We are hearing 20,000 people without power in metro Oklahoma City right now. Of course, there are tornadoes working their way through the area, coming out of a large storm complex that has been sitting, as you just heard, fairly fixed, generating these twisters. Joining us on the phone again from Oklahoma City with the latest is NBC's Jay Gray.
Okay. What's that?
Jay, what are you seeing? Are you still in downtown Oklahoma City?
I am downtown Oklahoma City. I don't know if you can hear the wind, but it's swirling pretty good down here. The rain has picked up dramatically. We're continuing to see lightning at times and heavy thunder at times as well. But again, the conditions have just been growing continuously worse and seemingly at a much more rapid pace. No one out, obviously, in this downtown area. I'm taking a look right now outside of one of the shelters, and there's just absolutely no one here right now. Again, this wind is picking up and beginning to drag pretty severely across the downtown area.
Jay, at this point, I would imagine, as you said before, there is essentially no one out. We can assume, hopefully, that the amount of time these storms have taken to generate, the amount of press coverage there's been in the local area, the sirens, all of that's contributing to folks really getting out of the way as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's the good news. Like we talked about earlier, the people who understand just how serious this can be. And as I walk through here, I can tell you that I'm seeing several banners down, and there's a lot of furniture, some outdoor furniture that's obviously been picked up and thrown to places it's not supposed to be. Bunting's knocked down on some of the buildings. Yeah, it looks like most people took heed of the advice, either got to a safe place or just got out of the area. A lot of the forecasters here locally were telling people, look, if you can't get underground, just leave, go somewhere else. And so I think that's what we've seen with a lot of the folks. I'm stepping back inside the area here, get out of that wind.
We heard that many local area businesses let their workers go early today so they could do just that, get out of the area, get out of the path of the storm. Do you have any sense of the number of people that are in public underground shelters?
I don't. I can tell you just from visually seeing that in 2 shelters in the downtown area here, I've seen hundreds, if not more than 1,000. And so there were several sporting events that were scheduled in the downtown area this evening. There's minor league baseball team and hockey team that both had games, and the siren's going off here again now. But and so there were a lot of people that had plans to start the weekend in the downtown area. Hopefully, a lot of them decided against coming down as they saw what was happening with the forecast.
We had just talked to Greg Carbon earlier at the NOAA Stormwatch Center. His word was that they've been monitoring this storm system for about 2 hours. It's been relatively fixed, sitting where it is, spinning these occasional tornadoes off in a southeasterly direction towards where you are. His sense was it was going to hold for at least another hour. So it sounds like the folks of Oklahoma City are in for a little bit more, at least, of this. Right now, we don't have any live reports of where a specific twisters are. We do know this storm system is bringing incredibly heavy rain and wind down across the entire area. We know power is out. I'm sorry, we're now going to Kurt Gwartney, who is on the ground in Oklahoma City. And Kurt, where are you right now?
I'm in downtown Oklahoma City. Actually, I've just taken shelter with my family in the lower level of the condo just north of Interstate 40 in downtown Oklahoma City, where we live.
Taking shelter, what precipitated you going down there?
Well, this storm developed to the west of Oklahoma City, and we started watching it out there, and it spawned a tornado, and it has remained tornadic, even though tornado hasn't been on the ground the entire time. But I can tell you that the winds have gotten so strong where we are in downtown Oklahoma City that I could no longer peek outside. I was unable to close the door without a lot of effort, so we decided to step in and stay safe.
Do most of the folks around there have either a safe room in the interior of their structure or a shelter that they can get down into?
Well, I don't know what the numbers would be. Most Oklahomans do know where to go where they live, which would be the safest place. Now, of course, as we saw in Moore, depending on the strength of the storm, depends on how safe you are. If you're hit by an EF5 with 200-mile-per-hour plus winds, you really need to be underground in a very well-designed safe room to remain safe. The tornadoes that aren't quite that strong, a sturdy structure, is going to withstand most tornadoes as long as you're, away from windows in the central room and lower level of where you live.
Kurt, I got to say, watching the last few weeks unfold in Tornado Alley, it's been obviously heart-wrenching and upsetting for people from around the country watching the devastation from the tornado that hit Moore. Is it the case that this is a particularly severe tornado season that you guys are going through? Does this feel like just what this kind of time of year usually feels like?
Well, actually, up until the Moore tornado, we had a very quiet tornado season in central Oklahoma. And you learn living here that tornadoes can happen 12 months out of the year. They can happen at any time. Certainly, this time of the year in May is when we typically have the most intense storms. And we also see periods like this where we've had, last week we had several days in a row where we had severe storms possible, including tornadoes. Same thing here. Our forecasters at the National Weather Service, Norman Forecast Office, and the Storm Prediction Center had told us, earlier that, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you need to be prepared for storms. Wednesday and Thursday, we had severe thunderstorms, and some tornadoes, but nothing terribly significant. Today, of course, that's different.
Kurt Gwartney, KGOU-FM public radio reporter in Oklahoma City right now. Thank you so much, Kurt. We'll check back with you later.
You're welcome.
I'm here in New York City as we monitor and are watching a powerful storm system that is spawning tornadoes headed towards Oklahoma City. Many businesses have evacuated. Folks have sought shelter underground. Many have simply fled the area as they were directed to do by local officials and meteorologists who've been tracking this storm. We just checked in with a man by the name of Greg Carbon from the NOAA Storm Watch Center who told us they've been tracking this storm system for 2 hours on radar as it has sat over just west of Oklahoma City and spawned a number of individual twisters, multiple vortices headed out south and east towards Oklahoma City, of course, near the area of Moore, which was so hard hit just 2 weeks ago with one of the most powerful tornadoes ever in recorded human history. This storm system, from what we can tell, is quite powerful. It has much of the conditions necessary to spawn powerful tornadoes. It is sitting there just west of Oklahoma City, casting a dark pall over the entire area. NBC's Jay Gray just talked to us from downtown Oklahoma City, describes a scene of ghost empty streets and darkness and tornado sirens as folks have fled the area and gone downstairs seeking shelter in some public buildings as well. We are going to continue to keep our eyes on the tornado. A tornado emergency has been declared for all of Metro Oklahoma City. Folks who are there are being directed to get out of the area. Local news is telling them to the street level where tornadoes may be brewing and where they may be headed. We have here at the desk Erwin Redlener, who's written a book called Americans at Risk, an expert on disaster and disaster preparedness. One of the things we were hearing earlier today was some of the roads to get out of Oklahoma City were just parking lots full of traffic. And I remember in the wake of Katrina and Irene, there was a lot of consternation about getting people out of the way of a disaster, and the arterial roads and the ways out were just not sufficient to deal with the level of traffic getting out. We heard earlier reports from our local affiliate of KFOR of people sitting in essentially parking lot bumper-to-bumper traffic on roads that may or may not be in the path of a tornado. Are we good at figuring out how to get people out of areas, at evacuating folks?
Well, you know, one of the biggest unmet challenges of disaster planning is how to deal with traffic that has to transport people out of an area that may be in harm's way. And this is true when we look at disaster plans for nuclear power plant meltdowns, tornadoes, hurricanes, and so forth. We don't really have the systems in place to allow for a predictably safe and efficient evacuation from almost any of our major metropolitan areas. In fact, some rural areas, which might seem like they're not that populated, the roads become absolutely standstill parking lots because lots of people are trying to get out through limited highway egress.
And this is part of the problem for preparing for disasters. To bring it back to tornadoes here, we just spoke with Kirk Whartney, who's a local public radio reporter, and he was making the point as he seeks shelter in an interior structure where he lives in Oklahoma City, that when you're talking about tornadoes, for most tornadoes, you are going to be safe without even having to go to an underground shelter if you have a sufficiently structurally sound interior room. For 1 in 1,000 tornadoes or 1 in a century's tornadoes like an EF5, like the one that hit Moore, that's not going to be good enough, and that's the tragedy that we saw result from the size of that tornado. The question is, how do you plan in a smart way for those kind of tail risk possibilities? The big tornado, the big storm, the big hurricane that's going to jam everything up in a kind of historically unprecedented way, or do you just have to throw up your hands and hope that that doesn't hit?
Well, let me just add to your equation of confusion here, which is that we also don't have much money available, at least so it's said. We don't have enough discretionary money to do everything for everybody in every place. So if we're going to be planning for the very rare tornado, that may not happen for a long time, although it might. We're going to have to make decisions, which we don't tend to do in an intelligent way very much anymore. But yes, these are priorities that have to be decided. It's like how high up, if you live on the coast, do you have to build your house to prevent you from getting storm surge? So same kind of question.
Dylan Dreyer, MSNBC meteorologist, is here with us now. And Dylan, can you give us the latest?
Well, Chris, we are watching these storms and these tornado warnings pop up. We have the tornado emergencies in effect across parts of Oklahoma City. And right now, the 2 tornado warnings you can see in the boxes that pop up at the end of that radar loop, they're overlapping, unfortunately, right over the Moore area. You can see as this storm now is moving southeast at about 25 to 30 miles per hour. Not only are we just dealing with the torrential downpours and the tornado force winds, but we also have straight line winds, which the difference is, you know, instead of those rotating winds that come at you from the east and then as it moves by, it comes at you from the west. These are just direct line winds that are at about 90 miles per hour right now. Those alone are enough to create serious damage, and those are embedded within the bigger tornado and the bigger storm system itself. We're also getting reports of golf ball sized hail. With that second storm that's just to the south, you can see that first tornado warning has now expired, but the second one just to the south of that, we at times had reports of softball sized hail. So not only are we seeing the wind damage, not only are we seeing the torrential downpours, but then I mean, imagine softball-sized hail coming from these storms. They're moving southeast right now, so it has taken that turn instead of moving due east. But unfortunately, more is in the path, and it is right under that tornado warning. It's in effect until 8 o'clock Central Time, so 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And unfortunately, the trackers and the chasers are on the ground just kind of watching these storms. I heard one of them say earlier, before she started talking, which direction is the storm moving? Because the direction is constantly changing, and they're trying to follow it and trying to stay around the direction it's moving towards. So, you know, they are really unsure until you kind of get the look from the radar and see where it's headed. But right now it is moving southeast, just south of Oklahoma City.
Dylan, just talk me through this for a second, just to make sure I understand this. There is a large storm system. That storm system comes with it the dark clouds, the hail, the rain, and it sounds like the system itself, wherever it is now producing winds up to 90 miles an hour, distinct from specific twisting vortexes of tornadoes that might be spinning off.
You know, it sounds as confusing as all the words you just said. I mean, you have this multi-vortex tornado. I mean, you see sometimes those rope tornadoes. They come down from the cloud, they zip around, they do their damage, and then they go back up. But then you have these larger storms, these funnel clouds, these wedges that come down from the cloud, and within those are all these little rope tornadoes and all these, sometimes mile-wide tornadoes that just kind of spawn off. So that's why this is such a huge storm. It shows the energy of the storm when you're talking about those multiple vortexes, the vortices that are spinning, and those are what the trackers are trying to spot. They're very hard to see. They're wrapped in rain. Now as it gets into a more populated area, it's wrapped in debris. They're very hard to pinpoint, so you kind of use the combination of the radar and then the spotters on the ground.
When we talked to Greg Carbon at the Stormwatch Center in Oklahoma, the NOAA Stormwatch Center, he was saying they're looking at the system and it's kind of been sitting there for a while. Do we have a sense of how quickly it's moving? What is the end game here? At what point do the folks in that battered region who are still rebuilding from the trauma and horror of just 2 weeks ago, at what point can they peek their head back outside and breathe a sigh of relief?
Well, unfortunately, you wait until these tornado warnings get lifted. I mean, they are under a PDS tornado watch, meaning a potentially dangerous situation, not just a regular tornado watch. And then you watch the warnings. Moore was under a warning. Oklahoma City was under the warning that actually expired at 7:45, and then the next one was just extended until 8 o'clock Central Time. So, some of these get let go, but then another one redevelops, and the whole storm system, the huge cloud, as you described it, is still spawning off these tornadoes. So it's where they drop down where these tornado warnings are issued. So it is moving southeast at 30 miles per hour. But that's just one particular storm. The whole big cloud that's producing all of this severe weather is not moving as fast, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Dylan Dreyer, thank you very much. We will be checking in with you. Dylan Dreyer letting us know the latest on the massive tornado emergency that is now hanging over the Oklahoma City metro region. Folks have been evacuated. Tornado sirens have been going off since the afternoon. We have seen the downtown evacuated, folks seeking shelter. There is a massive system with winds up to 90 miles an hour, softball-sized hail, and a series of multiple vortices of tornadoes spinning off, moving southeasternly and threatening the same area and around the same area that, of course, was the site of such devastation just 2 weeks ago. Joining us now is Melissa Rehberger. She spent some time in Oklahoma, was there for the last big, huge tornado before this one that hit Moore. Melissa, what are folks doing when they are under these kind of warnings?
Well, hopefully they're hiding. We're talking about the most populated areas in all of the state of Oklahoma right now. I was texting back and forth with my friend who is the mayor of Oklahoma City, and he shot me back a very short text saying, "Can't talk." So I think that they are trying to organize people into the best shelters they have available. Oklahoma City is a very formidable city, very strongly built buildings designed to withstand things like this. So hopefully people are safe and underground there. People who live in the suburban areas, we were just mentioning Moore. I can't believe it's going right back there again. Hopefully they have now had plenty of warning and will seek shelter. They need to have more of those shelters available to them, obviously, because the last we saw, the people who were able to stay underground are the ones who really survived. The good news in all of this, in Oklahoma City, it's really a place where people work and then go home. Not a lot of people live in Oklahoma City downtown area. So hopefully that's relatively deserted, and the people who stay behind hopefully have a place to go that is underground.
That's Melissa Rehberger. Thank you, Melissa. We'll be checking back with you later. We are hearing some reports of some of the twisters, the tornadoes coming off of this giant system, actually hitting the traffic jams that are right now occupying the roads as folks try to get out of the way of those twisters. We are going to dip back into our local affiliate, KFOR, which is, of course, tracking the storm.
Stay tuned and stay where you can listen to the weather and seek shelter. We're asking folks to do that right now.
Absolutely. Betsy Randolph with the OHP, thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you for more reports later. Right now, let's go back to the forewarned storm.
That's right, Mike.
Well, here's the latest, and things really have not changed. There's still a tornado on the ground near the old GM plant right now. I guarantee it, no doubt about it. That is heading over toward the northern sides of Lake Draper, but it's out there by around Midwest Boulevard and 240 right now, so it went through through parts of Del City, Crossroads Mall, 240, all in through there. It's still on the ground. There may still, we have, how big was that tree?
12 inches.
Foot diameter tree snapped at 104th Southwest and Western. So that'd be Oklahoma City address, but that's down, for simplicity, it's far, far west more. But it's an Oklahoma City address. It's right in through here. So 1 foot diameter trees snapped. There's still a circulation right there. Tornado warning for Norman. It's heading down through Cleveland. Say that again, Troy?
It's likely still on the ground.
This one here likely still on the ground. Looking at storm spotter, storm tracker reports, likely still on the ground north of Newcastle. Then there's another one out here to the west of Union City that also likely still has a tornado on the ground, and it is a large circulation out on the western side of Union City. And you see that little curly Q there near Tuttle as well. That's the one that Emily had a weak tornado with. I would say that there's a little weak tornado also near Tuttle, and the Coger area is a strong circulation center there as well. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. All 4 of these are dangerous and have tornado warnings with them. You can clearly see that hook over there by the GM plant. Is Mark Dillard still with us? I would say that one is certainly strengthening. Go, Mark.
Yep, Mike, and I've had a wind shift from my winds going to being drawn south and east to almost due east now on 240, and I'm coming up to Air Depot and the Tinker exit on 240, basically here at the old GM plant, as you were saying, just past the heart hospital as well. So my winds have now gone blowing from west to east towards the circulation. I mean, straight down the road. So it's almost going to be parked on 240, maybe wobbling back to the north a little bit. Trees blowing
the
straight
phone
east.
again from Oklahoma City. We have the latest from NBC's Jay Gray, who is in Oklahoma City. Jay, we checked in with you at the beginning of the hour. You said a darkness had fallen over the city. What is happening now?
Yeah, it's just much worse, much darker. The heavy rain has intensified. There's some hail mixed in with the system at this point, and it's completely black now. That's one of the problems that we're going to face at this point in this storm, is that it's very difficult to see if there's any type of circulation, any type of funnel on the ground because of all this rain and the darkness. What I can tell you, and you've been hearing this, there continue to be reports of multiple vortex on the ground, and unfortunately it looks like this may be heading toward the Moore area, which would just be horrible to imagine right now.
There is no way, I mean, this is an obvious question, but I think I know the answer, but there just is no way visually for the folks that are in that area right now to have any visual sense of whether a twister is headed towards them at this point.
Not at all. Not at all. And especially, and I think we were on the phone as some of the power went out in the downtown area, especially with the power out. It's just a complete darkness here, and only lit occasionally by the lightning that sparks at times. But not nearly long enough to make anything out, that's for certain.
So there is power out in downtown Oklahoma City right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. The last report I heard, and this is very early in the game, obviously, but it was 20,000 without power just initially, and that's I would not be surprised if that number grows significantly as this thing continues to move through. We
were just hearing from Dylan that the winds, even when they're not in the actual vortex, are sheer winds of 90 miles per hour. Can you see the wind right now? Can you feel the wind rustling through?
Oh, absolutely. No question about that. And like we talked about earlier, it's already causing very minor damage, but damage downtown. Trees have been uprooted here. There are parts of buildings that have been ripped away. I'm talking about little awnings or just got hit by a pretty big piece of hail here, so the hail's picking up little awnings and outdoor furniture and things that you would expect to be thrown around by severe winds. But it's without question picking up right now, and so are the conditions. They're deteriorating pretty quickly right now with this heavy rain being pushed by that wind, and at times a swirling wind. So there's clear indication that there's still rotation and it's still pulling. And then, again, we're adding some hail in the mix now, which obviously is not good.
Jay, are you outside right now?
I've just stepped back inside. In fact, I went and made a check on the area here where people had bunkered down, and some of those people making their way out to take a look around, but not venturing too far. I can just sticking outside of here right now. Yeah, the wind's very severe. It's It's a driving rain right now.
NBC's Jay Gray right now in downtown Oklahoma City, a city that is underneath storm clouds at this very moment. A severe tornado warning in effect for the metro area. The local affiliate KFOR report of tornado on the ground in Moore, Oklahoma. Moore, Oklahoma, of course, the site of one of the worst tornadoes in recorded history just 2 weeks ago. The folks in that area have been receiving warnings since mid-afternoon, at least, that there might be very, very severe threat of these tornadoes. Many employers have allowed their workers to go home. Many businesses have shuttered. Officials have been sounding the warning. Local news has been sounding the warning. There have been tornado sirens. Folks have been asked to get out of the way of the storms, to seek shelter. We've heard from NBC's Jay Gray that as many as 1,000, by his just eyeball estimate, have sought shelter in some of the public shelter accommodations in downtown Oklahoma City. Sports events, of course, have been canceled. Folks are bunkered down or fleeing out of the way. We have reports of one tornado on the ground in Moore, Oklahoma. Of course, this system, which is sitting over the metro area, bringing hail and heavy rain and winds gusting up to 90 miles an hour, is spinning off individual tornadoes. With local storm chasers, storm trackers, and meteorologists are attempting to track those so they can let folks know, as darkness has descended in the metro area in Oklahoma City, to let folks know where the exact path, using technology and radar, where the exact path of those are going. We right now have Dylan Dreyer, MSNBC meteorologist, here with us to give us the latest update. Can we track where the tornado on the ground outside of Moore or in Moore is?
They were saying it's in southwest Moore, and it's one of the stronger tornadoes that we're seeing. And we do have several tornado warnings in and around the Oklahoma City area and the Moore area as well. And right now they are saying there are 4 confirmed tornadoes. Some are weaker than others in a town called Tuttle, Oklahoma, near Bridge Creek, which is to the west. It's a weak tornado, but it's the one in southwest Moore that is actually one of the stronger of the 4 tornadoes that they do have confirmed on the ground. These tornadoes aren't really staying on the ground for long periods of time, or at least not all of them are. They're kind of dropping down from the cloud and then they pop back up. That's why the storm chasers are so significant in chasing these tornadoes, because they get a good picture of what's going on the ground. The problem now that we're running into is the fact that it's getting darker. You don't have the eyesight to see these storms. You can't just shine a flashlight on a tornado and see where it's going. Now we're relying a lot more on the technology, which doesn't give you as good of a picture as when you just see it right on the ground. So, you know, there are 4 tornadoes on the ground. There are several tornado warnings even north of Oklahoma City, up near Tulsa. So Oklahoma right now, it was predicted that this area would be in a potentially dangerous situation under this tornado watch. That's how they described it from the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma, and that is exactly what we're seeing, centered right in central Oklahoma. But in southwest Moore, Oklahoma right now is where one of those confirmed tornadoes is. And, you know, you just have to keep watching and seeing where these tornado warnings pop up.
Thank you, Dylan. We now have Sergeant Jeremy Lewis from the Moore Police Department in Moore, Oklahoma, where we have confirmed reports that a tornado has touched down there. Sergeant, can you tell me, can you confirm that there's a tornado touching down there, and what is the status of the folks in Moore?
We have multiple tornadoes reported at different areas of the city. One is reported over I-35 and 19th Street. We are actually trying to get east right now to get away from this. We have already passed several power poles that are down east of where the tornado is supposed to be. So we're just trying to we're actually running from it right now.
Sergeant, could you tell me, get a sense of do you have any sense of whether folks were able to get out? The folks obviously are still in the midst of rebuilding and recovering. Were folks able to get out of Moore? Are there shelter provisions for people that didn't have a place to go?
We do not have any public shelters. They've been warned all day that there was a potential of this, but as we crossed I-35, it was literally a parking lot. So the area where they're reporting a tornado crossing, I don't know where those people are going that are stuck in those cars.
You're telling me that there are people stuck on the road right now as the tornadoes spin through?
We're basically in our rush hour right now, and yes, I-35 was totally stopped as far as we could see whenever we left.
Are you in your car right now, Sergeant?
Yes, we are in our car trying to get away from it right now.
And do you have a sense of where the tornado is? You're driving around the darkness, I guess.
It is still a little bit light here. It's basically direct directly northwest of where we're at right now.
Is there any way that, I mean, so folks are right now on the road and can't get off the road as these tornadoes spin through? That is Sergeant Jeremy Lewis of the Moore Police Department, who, as you heard, is driving away from a tornado that is now spinning its way through Moore. He told us reports that this is their rush hour. He said there are cars that are jammed in traffic on the road. We are going to continue to monitor